Welcome back to Digital Necessity Answered. Today I am joined by Anthony Frances, who is going to talk to us about the impact of digital in logistics. Anthony, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, good morning. Yes, and thank you for having me on, and I'm glad to be here. I'm half British and half French. Did all my education in the UK, and then worked in France for a number of years, and now I live in Dallas, Texas. I've been in the supply chain space for probably 25 years now, and spent 10 years at FedEx, and I ran FedEx's European EMEA region for logistics and e-commerce back about 12 years ago. I left to go to the dot-com world. So I've been working both in forward and reverse logistics now for a number of years, probably in the last years, a little bit more on the reverse side. For those who don't know, reverse is the returns management becoming so important today with the rise of e-commerce has increased 54% since the beginning of COVID, and so the number of returns has increased proportionately, and it's becoming a big. So the whole reverse chain of returns, triage, remanufacturing, putting it back on the e-shelf so that it could be sold again and mitigate the loss for the selling companies has become a big issue.
Well, there's been a lot of changes in logistics in the past 25 years. Interesting enough, I started in logistics as well, on the manufacturing side. And reverse logistics was never even mentioned at that point. It was something that didn't get talked about. So what are the big things you've seen in the past 25 years that with more even with computerizing and automation, and then further with digital, what are the big things and trends you've seen?
Well, I think there's an area that I like to call the three supply chains. It's the physical, the informational, and the financial. And those three have so many different touch points. When you look at the quote to cash cycle, and today, in the old days, we talked about B2B or B2C. Today, it's B2B to B2B to C. And so you have so many, a transaction begins maybe with a purchase order going to China, and then it kickstarts a whole series of reactions along the way that have to have information attached to them. Without that, we're dead in the water. Or the information about stuff arrives so late that you can't react to something if something happens to go wrong during that journey, if you like, from end to end. So, and then the financial piece is important as well, because if you don't know when it's been delivered, you can't invoice it, and if you can't invoice, you can't collect. And I know that Endava's done a lot of work on the whole payment side of things in the last few years, and for me, that's a very critical thing, because I'm originally a chartered accountant. So, financial numbers are important for me too. So there we are.
No, it's you're fascinated. That's fascinating, because I don't think any of us who click that button on the internet to buy something think beyond that click and all the events it triggers. And you mentioned that specifically as a result of COVID-19, we've seen a 54% increase in digital or e-commerce purchasing. How do you see companies and the industry rising to the challenges of not necessarily having a person to hand the problem off to dealing with those breakage points?
Yeah, some of the issues that I've seen is the first one was empty shelves. We see that regularly every year when we have a hurricane come into the east side of the U.S., where everyone just dives to the stores to buy not only electrical power kits, but also for food and drink, and suddenly everything's gone. Well, I went into 2 days after the COVID lockdown started here. I went out and did my weekly shop. Well, I didn't bring back very much because the stores were empty. So that breakage point that happened for companies that suddenly said, gosh, we've got no inventory. And so they had the strategic decision to place intermediate buffer warehouses where you could have some form of strategic stock. You know, the governments have it for oil, they have it for other products. Well, maybe some companies overthought the process there, and the supply chain just got stretched to the point of breakage, and that was really important. You know, and if you get erroneous so to come back to your point on the digital side of things, if you don't get full update of package status, or it's erroneously input, then you get bad information all the way down the line. I often look at it. I worked in the life science area for a number of years, and one of the issues there is that if a researcher has an assay that they're preparing and they need an isotope to come, there's only a few manufacturers of isotopes around the world. One of them's in Boston, which is where I work. You would ship stuff from Boston to Melbourne, say, in Australia, and that package had to be re-iced several times along the way to keep that isotope alive because of the shelf life it had. If something goes wrong there, it's manual intervention. And now we have that information available to us because they have sensors that sit on the package, sit on the goods inside the package, and then you have package tracking information, which everyone knows about. It's been around for years. But it's if one of the people in that chain doesn't do their job, then all hell breaks loose. And the researcher at the end has spent 6 weeks, 6 months sometimes preparing an assay. It's all lost, and I have to go back to the drawing board again and start over. And so that's a real expensive concern.
Now, that is a really good example of a highly perishable good. And you mentioned there the IoT, Internet of Things, being tracked more. How are you seeing that evolving in logistics now? I know it's been a bit of a myth, and now it's really starting to pick up.
Yeah, some of the IoT devices that they have today, especially around sensors and RFID, it took an awful long time for RFID to become a standard, if you like. And now, everyone said, "Oh, we'll never be able to capture every package on a pallet. There is no way." And so you always have the naysayers there. Well, I think the thing's gone the other way now, and everyone's saying, yeah, that's the right way to go. Same thing with blockchain. I look at blockchain in two pieces. One is on the payment side, the cybercurrency side, which is, I know nothing about that at all. I look at it from the trust that you can bring to bear in a transaction from end to end. And we talked about B2B to B2B to C. The very first piece of information that gets put in typically is a purchase order. Well, it has a ship to address. It's got a bill to address. It's got all the vendor information. It's got everything on there. Why rekey that information every time as it moves along the thing? And it does happen. I can tell you, freight forwarders do this a lot. The amount of documents that get put into a pouch to go with a container on a ship from China to the US is staggering, absolutely staggering. And I think sometimes they do that as a CYA, excuse the expression, thing, as opposed to saying, I trust my blockchain process through to manage all of that information and make sure that it is immutable. And so those are some of the areas for IoT, and there are others. I mean, I've seen sensors that just in the home goods and appliances, but that's not logistics. But some of it's fun stuff, but there's some really good stuff around.
Well, you could push that just a little bit further. You mentioned that in white goods, not necessarily, or home appliances, not necessarily as part of, the logistics tracking. But could you see ever that trust relationship is pushed from the B to B to the B to the C, with the C having that blockchain trust relationship as well, especially when it comes to reversing and returning something, a good that they didn't want?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the whole reverse process, before you'd pick up the phone, you'd call a call center, and someone would then key in the information, and then they'd say, well, take a package and go over here. You'd mail it yourself at your cost. Today, everyone is doing free returns. And so, and you're pointed immediately online to a part of the web, your customer website. You look at Amazon, you have returns. You just click returns, order number, which item, and it's what comes up on the screen is essentially a copy of your delivery note from what you received, and you just select the item you want to return, and bingo, stick it in your mailbox. Print out a post office. A label, stick it on the package, put it in your mailbox. Well, here we have mailboxes in the street because you'd probably have to take it to the local PO, but
this is true.
Yeah. So, but it makes life so much easier, And then so then the vendor, the retailer gets an advance ship notice that the item is coming in. So their receiving process then is so much easier because all they do is just scan the package as it hits, and then they know what's in it, they know why it was returned, and they can begin their triage process internally to say, well, we can put this straight back on the shelf because it never got opened, or, oh, we got to open it, inspect it, test it, and then rebox it and put it back on the shelf again. And that's that whole return process.
So that does sound though that it's a we well off still to be able to get such a slick process running. I guess that would be the nirvana. What really creative things have you seen that have cropped up recently in the kind of digital and the logistics space that made you think, I wish I'd thought about that one?
Some of the tools that are used in the fulfillment process, especially today. So some of the robotics that are being used in there are really, really clever. The way they've automated fulfillment. I mean, I used to ship 80,000 cell phones for AT&T at a previous company that I worked at, and we had 900 people working on the line. To be able to achieve that from the whole end-to-end process of processing there. Well, today I think they only have 300 people. So the impact of automation along there has been, I'm sorry, that's the dog. It seems to be a ubiquitous problem with video interviewing today. So
it is.
So robotics moving pallets from location to people as opposed to moving people to the location to do picking. Huge improvement in the speed and efficiency so Amazon have a whole robotic areas in their fulfillment centers. We now have 3 fulfillment centers in Dallas, 2 million square feet each, I think, for Amazon. It's crazy, but they all have high levels of automation to be able to say, I don't need to move people around the building. It's dangerous. There's always safety issues, concerns about that. It's much better if I move the pallet to the person or the tote to the person through conveyancing. And you're never going to eliminate conveyancing completely from a warehouse because there's just the sheer speed of packages having to go through I apologize for the dog. Can you get that out when you do the editing? So the other thing is pick-to-light systems as well, which improve the efficiency of picking in the warehousing in the warehouse. So you're walking down, if you actually have to go and pick something off a shelf, a light comes on, and then on that little screen it says pick 6, and then the clever thing it does, it says, please tell me how many are left on that location. So at the same time, you're actually doing a physical audit and physical inventory. So you don't have to send a second team out later to do, unless there's a discrepancy, to actually do that physical, your physical inventory. So it's all done by one single touch point, if you like. And then we talked about blockchain. Obviously, that's a huge change that's happened in the recent years, and it's still in its. I wrote a blog about that on my personal website about a year ago, where I sort of I looked at there were two schools of thought out there of how useful it was, and I've come a long way around from my original. If you read it, it's a bit facetious, but I've come a long way around. It could be hugely useful, especially in this long extended B2B to B2C cycle that we talked about.
Okay, I guess as everything matures, blockchain is one of those. It's getting cleverer and less power hungry. It becomes more useful in more applications. So no, it's going to be fascinating to see how that evolves. Well, that was a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, Helena, great. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Anytime.